So the time has come for me to finally review Mont Blanc Explorer. I love this fragrance to death. I really love this. I wish there was a 200 ml version because I would cop that shit immediately. This is just so perfect. There is something about this fragrance that whenever I smell it, I feel good about myself. This fragrance and Body Curos give me the two exact same feelings of, man, I feel good. You know what I mean? Like fragrances that give you that feeling become your favorite. And this being the more winter suited, darker fragrance, and this being the more summer, fruitier, fresher. So they're completely different two worlds, but this is my favorite for, colder days. This is my favorite for hotter days. So that's that. But we're here for Mont Blanc Explorer. Let's get right into it. Presentation on this is perfect. You got a nice leather wrap around it. It's not real leather, it's fake. You got the Mont Blanc emblem. You've got this weird thing going on with the cap. The cap kind of ages. It's really weird the way it does that, but I think that adds character to it because overall the entire fragrance is trying to be like a exploration type theme. I mean, it's even in the name. I mean, who would have guessed, right? But yeah, the bottle is really nice. Very similar to Creed Aventus's bottle, especially with the leather wrap and the black theme. It's pretty interesting. But I really like the top part. It's so detailed. It's amazing. And I love the colors. It's amazing. But you can also get this in a fully silver top, which I'm a really big fan of. I like the smoked out metallic gray, the gunmetal gray on that. It's pretty nice. So yeah, that's the presentation of Mont Blanc Explorer. 10 out of 10 for me. And the only issue I have with it, maybe it would be a 9.5, is because you can't really see how much you have, except unless you do this and take a look at that. But I kind of like looking. I kind of like seeing where the juice is at, even just putting light through it. But that's just a personal grab of mine. It doesn't take away from the fragrance. It's just a presentation. So now for the smell of the fragrance. This is a fragrance that I could never really put right. I could never really understand how to properly describe it because there's so many facets of understanding the context of this fragrance. Is this a Creed Aventus inspired clone? Is this a mix of Jour Sauvage and Creed Aventus? Is this a standalone fragrance by itself, themed by exploration? Is it just another generic blue fragrance on the market? I would have to say I'm gonna give it the most unbiased review because, I try to make it unbiased but also have my personal feelings of it. But this is inspired by Aventus. The smell is so close to Aventus in the opening. It's really close, but at the same time, it's pretty different. It has very similar facets of Aventus in here, which is really weird because, the notes are so different. You got bergamot, pink pepper, clary sage, leather, vetiver, ambroxan, akigala wood, patchouli, and cacao pod. And you would think that this would be a dark, sensual fragrance because of all those heavy notes like the leather, the patchouli, cacao pod, but it's actually really just refreshing. It's not even close to that. But let's get into it. Let me spray a couple of sprays of this on my wrist. Dry down is on the cap, so we'll have a mark point for that. The sprayer is pretty decent. Very decent sprayer. Dude. Immediately when it opens up, you get a blast of this. This is the best way I can explain it when it opens up. You get a fresh blast of bergamot wrapped in ambroxan to give it that classic designer feel of using ambroxan and bergamot. That's a very common opening. Tried and tested opening, it's very common. You get a slightly bit of sage in this, which gives it a slightly herbal nuance, but the sage kind of acts as more of a cooling herbal nuance throughout the whole fragrance. It's not necessarily a standalone note that you'll distinguish. You just kind of notice it. And last but not least, you get a slightly bit of rosy nuances from the pink pepper. It adds a bit of bite, a little bit of spice, some girth to the fragrance. So it opens up, best way I can put it, opens up with a fresh blast of ambroxan and bergamot, and you get a bit of pink pepper and a bit of sage. What this makes for is a nice, refreshing, kind of like a classy feeling opening. I could definitely see this being used in a formal situation. I could definitely see this being used in a just everyday scent. I don't really see this as a clubbing fragrance, although clubbing fragrances tend to be more of like a loud, obnoxious, heavy, sweet. I think it could pull it off, maybe. That's the opening of Explorer. Now, the similarities of Explorer being close to Aventus is quite far. It's really strange because there's really not that much similar notes to Aventus except for the bergamot. That's about it. The bergamot and maybe a little bit of the vetiver and a little bit of the patchouli, but it's missing pineapple, blackcurrant, apple, birch. It's missing ambergris. It's missing so many notes, blackcurrant. It's missing so many notes from Aventus, but it still manages to smell so similar in the opening. The best way I can put the opening and the overall fragrance is it's a designer take on Aventus. Take Aventus, take the DNA, but give it that classic designer feel. You get Explorer, and to me that's a good thing if you're looking to get that Aventus DNA, but you want something, in the designer world. And I think that's also kind of broadens the audience for this fragrance, because with Aventus you get a really dark, smoky essence from the birch tar and the birch, and that can put some people off. That can make people kind of see it more as a very specific genre of fragrance, but it's still pretty mass appealing. But this is even more mass appealing. Man, the opening is just, I love the opening. The opening is just it's so energizing. It's so fresh. It has a right amount of spice from the pink pepper. The ambroxan and the bergamot work so well together, and the sage gives it that unique kind of herbal nuance that you don't really get too much in designer men's fragrances. I would even say there is there's another fruit in this. I'm not too sure what it is, but it's a very faint other fruit. You got the bergamot, but the bergamot is literally the only fruit in this, but some people say they get a pineapple note, but to me that's probably just the ambroxan playing games with you. But that is the opening. And the dry down of Explorer, this is where things start to get a little bit weird. The dry down of Explorer doesn't smell like Aventus at all. It's zero resemblance to me personally. The dry down, you lose that bergamot, you lose a bit of that freshness. It's still fresh, but it's more focused on the ambroxan. It's more focused on the ambroxan, the pink pepper, and a new fragrance, a new note that comes in, which is akigala wood. Akigala wood, if you're not too aware of that, it's a synthetic molecule, and it's basically resemblance to a a peppery kind of woody smell. That's the best way I can put it. Akigala wood, it's peppery. It can trick you into thinking that there's smoke in here, but there's no smoke in here at all. There's no tar, there's no birch. It's akigala wood. And to me, the akigala wood is okay. Sometimes in different days, it can smell like just straight up pepper, and it can put me off sometimes. It's nice and balanced today, but some days it can get pretty overbearing, the akigala wood, for me personally. I know Chaos Fragrances, he did not like this fragrance at all. He thought it was too scratchy, too peppery, too dry, and I can definitely see where he's coming from. I 100% see that. But to me, I only get that sometimes. It's weird because I completely get what he's saying, but I only get that sometimes. And for me, it's really just an ambroxan monster with this strange kind of aromatic facet to it. So the dry down, again, let's put it again. You got akigala wood to give it that peppery, smoky, woody vibe, nuance. You got the ambroxan. We all know what ambroxan smells like. It's slightly salty, slightly oceanic, ambery. It's smooth. It's also a little bit scratchy sometimes. Ambroxan is a unique note depending on how you manipulate it. In this fragrance, it kind of gives it this fresh, aromatic vibe with a little bit of a sweet nuance, and you have a little bit of patchouli, just the slightest bit. It's only ever so slightly there. If I didn't tell you patchouli was in here, you wouldn't think there was patchouli in here. But yes, the patchouli, a slight powdery herbal nuance again, and you have pink pepper, and the pink pepper is pretty dominant in this. It gives it a nice rosy nuance, because we all know what pink pepper smells like, right? It's slightly fruity, not fruity, slightly sweet, peppery, rosy, very similar to rose, but it's more of a spicier rose kind of smell. Yeah. Some notes that I do not get in this fragrance at all is cacao pod. I don't even know if cacao pod is probably just the pod itself, or if it's going to give off a chocolatey smell, but there is no cacao pod in here whatsoever. I don't know why they put that in there. I don't even know if they're telling the truth, because there is no cacao pod in here. I do not smell it. Unless, you know, a cacao pod plays just a bouncing note. I can see that. I just don't smell it, you know. Now, there is also leather, which I don't really get too much leather. I can kind of see it, but to me, it's melding with the Akigala wood, you know, because leather at times, it can smell a bit, you know, primal, rugged, animalic, kind of like a, you know, leather. But to me, I don't really get too much leather. If I am getting leather, it's probably just the pink pepper and the Akigala wood mixing in together, but no leather for me. So overall, the fragrance dries down to that. It's nice and woody, nice and aromatic, nice and designer feeling, close to Aventus a little bit, but it's its own thing. Now, overall, I would have to say the overall smell of it is just, I love it. I don't know why I love it so much, but it just works for me. I gotta spray this again. Man, the opening is probably my favorite. The dry down is okay, it's good. But the opening is where it's at. That bright bergamot, ambroxan, pink pepper, clary sage. It makes so much, it's just so good, man. It's so good. I've never been this obsessed with a fragrance before, and I've never been this passionate about a fragrance before, but I just love it. I love it, man. It smells great. So that is Explorer, the smell. As for the overall performance, I would say this performs very well. It lasts a long time, but it stays to a skin scent after the first 2 hours, which sucks. I know it sucks. Big cow nutsacks. It's okay, the performance. I'd say it lasts longer than it projects, which is the case for most fragrances. But if I had to change one thing about this fragrance, I would say maybe the bright fruity nuances in the opening, and the herbal nuances as well, amp that up in the dry down. For me, this fragrance, the way it smells, is still a 9.5. You know, if it didn't have that scratchy feeling sometimes, it'd be a 10, straight up. But then again, haven't found the perfect fragrance yet. So that is Mont Blanc Explorer. You know, as for compliments, now, I don't really talk about compliments on this channel. Again, I'm not the biggest fan of, you know, it's nice, but not the reason why I get fragrances. So compliments. Now, I don't really remember getting much from this. I do remember, you know, one time I was at a party, I was wearing this, and one of my friends, Han, if you're watching, so she could smell me from like 5 meters away, which is a good thing because fragrances, you want it to radiate. So it has good projection, and she was like, "Oh, you smell good," and I'm like, "Oh, thank you." So yeah, that's the only time I've ever had, you know, interest with this. But then again, where I live, nobody really, you know, compliments each other for fragrances. It's weird, you know. I kind of want to break that gripe of it's too weird to say someone smells good. No, bro, it's not. Saying someone smells good is like one of the best compliments you can ever get, especially in a world where people smell like onions and body odor. But yeah, anyway, so that is Explorer. I love this. Let me know what you think of this fragrance. I think it is fantastic. I love it. Always going to be a staple in my collection. Alternatives. What are some good alternatives for Mont Blanc Explorer? I would say Jour Sauvage. That is more expensive, but that has a similar feel. It is, you know, peppery. It does have that ambroxan and bergamot opening that this one has. Another alternative, let me get this up. Another alternative is Vibrant Leather. This one is pretty decent. It's more fresh, less peppery, much more in the fruity nuances. But to me, it lacks that depth that I like, that girthiness that this one has. It's not there. Another one is Dunhill Icon. This one is a little bit more focused on the aromatic side of things. There is not much woodiness in this. A lot of vetiver in this one. I'll do a review on this one as well, but this one also opens up with bergamot and, well, it doesn't have ambroxan in it, but it opens up with a fresh bergamot and, you know, peppery vibe. So this is another one. So yes, that is my review for Mont Blanc Explorer. If you like this video, please leave a like. It's like donating money to YouTubers, but without actually donating money. It just helps us out with the algorithm, helps us reach more people so we can help them decide on if Mont Blanc Explorer should be the fragrance for you. I love this fragrance. I'll see you guys later. Thank you so much for watching. Peace.